Hello and welcome to Podtoid. I'm CJ.
I'm Chris.
I'm Dan.
I'm Occams.
And this is episode 468. Thank you for joining us today. It is just the boys on the show this week, and this episode we're going to talk about a bunch of manly shit like steak and beer and nachos, and learning how to use a simple sewing kit to let out your pants when you get fat from eating too much steak, beer, and nachos. We're also going to talk about Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, which is some manly shit. And then we're going to take a look at the more powerful next-gen consoles with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. So much power in those consoles that we're going to have to do that Tim Allen thing where he grunts about more power and then sells out his drug suppliers to get a lighter sentence. So I look forward to doing that.
If you presented like all of our prior shows with this kind of new aggressive voice you've got going on, we probably would have been more successful.
Damn.
Nope, I can't do it, and I hate it so much. I hate it so much.
Basically, CJ should have just been doing a Vince McMahon impression the entire time.
Okay, well, no. I'm not going to do that. I don't feel comfortable using the N-word in front of black people who are my employees. But before we get into any of that, Chris, welcome back.
Hi.
Feeling good?
I got a PS5. It's still in the box.
Now, is it in the shipping box or is it in the packaging box?
It's in the shipping box, but I have slit the box open to check that it's in there.
Okay, so
big surprise. There's another box in that box.
And inside that box is a Nerf gun.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
No, maybe by the time this episode goes out, I will have set it up. But right now, it's just kind of sitting there in the corner of the room, minding its own business.
Are you? Do you have a lot of space on your entertainment center to set it up, or is it something you're gonna have to wiggle in there?
None at all. I have no idea where it's going to go. At this point, it's almost going to have to stand up next to the entertainment center like it's a PC tower. I might try and scoot it in behind the TV, but even if I do that, I wouldn't be surprised if you can't see it fucking peeking out over the top of the TV.
It's like 15 inches tall, right?
I've not done the measurements, but I've either got to put it behind my TV or down by the side of it. And then load up, all those brand new games like Rainbow Six Siege and Streets of Rage 4.
Yeah. Occams, it's Thanksgiving week here in America. You're not going anywhere, are you?
Nope.
Staying home?
Yep.
That's a smart thing to do. If you are traveling this week, you really shouldn't be. But if you aren't, or if you are, even if you are, you should probably get to the grocery store to buy a bunch of toilet paper because that's going to start happening again. We're going to get a bunch of shortages on that. I don't understand this whole fascination with going home with Thanksgiving, even in a normal year. Like, I'm spending like Thanksgiving home alone, which in any other year would be just sad to say. But this year it's like the responsible thing to do. And I just don't understand why there's this whole fucking drive for tradition. Like, oh, this whole year has been so different. We can't let this holiday be different. It has to feel the same for everyone. So gotta go home. Or you have fucking Bojo over there in England trying to get everyone to, have Christmas just like you always had it. It's like, why not embrace the strangeness of this year and encourage people to do just like out there Thanksgivings? Like, first of all, no one needs a fucking turkey. White meat sucks. Why not encourage people to have, 15 different boxes of cereal and just do cereal at Thanksgiving? That's fun.
Also, TJ, I just want to interrupt. I don't expect you to refer to Boris Johnson as Bojo after I told you what his actual full name is.
That's true.
Does anyone else? Dan, do you know what Boris Johnson's full actual name is?
No, I barely know who he even is to begin with.
Boris Johnson's the name that they use because it sounds like, chummy, like your mate. But his real full name is Alexander Boris de Fefel Johnson.
Holy shit. That sounds like some sort of supervillain in some comic or something.
But like a Metal Gear Solid character.
Right. Yeah. But if they're Bojo, then it's like your mate down the pub, so you can relate to him. But yeah, that's his actual name's that.
Sounds like the end result of one too many cousins fucking over the period of hundreds of years.
Well, that's just British aristocracy for you. So,
if I had a mate named Bojo, I don't feel like he would be a mate in the way of a friend. I feel like he'd be the guy I could go to maybe buy bootleg DVDs and possibly dispose of a body. Like it would be a transactional friendship.
Yeah, the kind of friend that you'd lend money to, and then when you're like, "Oh, can I have that $20 back?" They'd just be like,
That's it. That's the end.
"Yeah, that's
Okay.
it."
Well, now it's is it Duffafel or what's the?
It's like DFFL. It's like DE space PFE or something like that.
It's the PFE that gets me. It's.
It might just be pronounced fell. I don't know. I've already dedicated too much time to learning his fucking name anyway. They announced it's kind of been learned by the press that they're going to drop all lockdown rules between the 22nd and the 28th of December, and it's just like thousands are going to die. Brilliant.
Because that's just our world now.
Well, like we talked about this on Twitter briefly this week, CJ. This idea of like every Christmas must be the same, even when there's like hundreds, even when there's millions of lives at stake. God forbid. But what about the children and their toys?
Yeah, they're still gonna get that fucking shit. You just don't have to go see Grandma and Grandpa. God damn, is it so hard, people?
One of our papers here literally had a headline this week that said, "Yes, you can hold Granny's hand this Christmas." That was like the front page headline. Right?
And then hold it 6 months later in the coffin when it's cold and plastered.
God damn it.
I take it, by the way, this is your funny story to start the show off, yeah?
No, I have one. I have a good one to start. This is that funny that it's sad kind of thing, where you just have to laugh at the desperation of it all with our society as he trails off, thinking about how terrible the world is. Anyways, before we do get talking about games, I do want to start us off with something that's a little more humorous. It's a story about motorcycle racing. And for this story, we're going to be going to Kansas City, Kansas. And no, Mr. President, that is not where the Chiefs play football. So in Kansas City, a man who is not named in the report was engaging with others in some motorcycle racing. As one does when they own a motorcycle. Anyway, he was out there racing his bike when tragedy struck. And he lost control of his bike and wiped out. And then tragedy struck again when the gun in his waistband went off and shot him in the hip. And then tragedy struck again when the man was hit by a car from somebody fleeing the scene of the accident. And then tragedy struck again when the police got there and found a whole bunch of methamphetamine in the guy's motorcycle bag.
I'm so close to coming.
He was taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, so he is going to be okay. From the information I could find, the man has not yet been arrested as he is still recovering from his rendition of The Aristocrats.
What is was it Hemingway that was like tasked to write the shortest, saddest story on earth? It might maybe someone else, but it was baby clothes never worn,
baby shoes never worn.
Baby shoes never worn. This is an update to that.
It's all too perfect. It's just all too perfect. You wipe out, you shoot yourself, you get hit by a car from someone who doesn't want to get in trouble because they probably have drugs in their vehicle, and then you get arrested for having drugs. Or at least you're going to be arrested.
It's white trash mousetrap is what it is.
Just while we're on that subject, did anyone ever actually play Mousetrap properly?
No.
I don't think anyone's ever played Mousetrap the way where you actually roll the dice and go around the board. You just set up the trap, you set it off, and you just go, well, that was 10 minutes. What's next?
No, see, we would build the trap and then roll the dice to get to the end of it. But you're supposed to build it as you go along playing it, and we never played like that. Also, what a hassle to put together and take apart every time. Fucking hell.
Yeah, it's like dominoes. That's 2 hours of setup for 15 seconds of gratification.
2 hours of setup for 15 seconds of gratification? Sounds like my sex life. Ayo! Manly shit. Okay, let's go ahead and get talking about games, and we're going to start with Chris. Why don't you tell us about Cold War?
Well, I've already written 1,800 words on it. You just go and read them instead.
I need to know how realistic Ronald Reagan's jelly beans looked, because that's a very important part of the character, as Ronald Reagan loved jelly beans. So I need all that jelly bean news.
Well, He doesn't actually eat jelly beans at
Nope.
any point in the game. He's in like one scene for like 11 seconds, and then that's it. Despite how plastered all over the marketing like he is.
You know, he did say well a lot.
He did say well a lot. Weird. You're gone.
Is the final scene of the game like just Nancy Reagan like shaking his shoulder while he just looks off into space and doesn't answer her?
Yeah, Cold War's another very good Call of Duty game. It has a really, really punchy, fast-paced arcade feel to it. Like really kind of, especially the multiplayer, which is like lightning fast and really kind of loose and over the top, which has actually won it a lot of detractors because people kind of wish it was tighter and a bit more kind of tactical. But it really is kind of like a run and gun, like the multiplayer aspect is, which might harm the game in the long run. But the campaign's really interesting. It has these really good, genuinely like kind of spy-based missions in it. There's one where you're going through like East Germany and to assassinate some dude, and you have to like sneak through his house and plant bugs in his suitcase. And then to find out who he is, you visit a bar and you've got to look for a woman with a blue umbrella and trade code words. And all that stuff's really, really good. But because it's Call of Duty, the game has to keep contriving for like massive battle scenes. And I'm not sure if you remember the Cold War, but there weren't too many massive battles in it. But it finds a way to send us back to Vietnam at one point, because of course it does. I think there's like a flashback. Remember when we were in Vietnam? And then there's a level in Vietnam. Remember when we were in World War II?
It was the worst Family Guy episode.
Hey Lois, remember when Teen Wolf was in Vietnam? So yeah, the spy levels are really, really good, and the other levels are just standard good Call of Duty shooting galleries. There's a couple of really bizarre moments in it. I love the idea that they keep the RCXD, which is like in most of the Call of Duty games, that's like an explosive radar fancy fucking remote control drone. But in this, it's like a Tonka truck with a block of C4 sellotape to it. And I love the idea that in the game, like you chase down a jetliner with one of those. Like that's got to have like one of those 540 VZ Technigold motors that you used to have to charge up off your dad's car battery, like in those 80s radio control. Did you ever have one of those like high performance radio control cars, Occams?
You know, I didn't, but I had friends who did, and I will never forget a buddy of mine. Like when he first showed me this thing, he warned me, like, "Hey, watch your feet because if this hits you at full speed, it'll break your ankle."
I remember you could get a hovercraft one that was just like it could actually go over water. And as a kid, I was like, "Oh, that's awesome!" And it's like 120 pounds. I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll just stick with this Bigfoot with a little button on the side of it." But Bigfoot, there's a reference.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's another glossy quality like Call of Duty game. Like I know a lot of people, we've talked about this on the show before, a lot of people who don't like that franchise hate those games. A lot of people who like that franchise hate those games. But I find it really entertaining. I think it's kind of well made. And I really liked the spy stuff. There's some code breaking in there. There's some kind of figure out the next number and learn these words and then find the letters hidden in these newspaper articles, and that kind of stuff's really cool. If there is something about the game that really let me down, I just really wish it was more of that. Like, I know that they've got to sell these games and they've got to make the fucking gazillion dollars they spend on them back, but if just 1 year they were like, we've gone full spy, and there's some gunfights in there, but you know, we've gone full code word, we've gone everything's hiding in rooms and planting bugs under tables and all of that. If they did that, I know we've got kind of like the Hitman franchise for that, but they proved with this game that they can move away from just like Desert Storm. Like they can move away from that stuff and do something really engaging. And it'd be wicked if just once they went all out and did something very different. But the problem is much like FIFA or Madden, or Assassin's Creed, people expect a certain thing from these games when they buy them every year. and the shareholders expect, and I guess they're always going to have to stick to, at the end of the day, helicopters exploding and you being caught in the explosion and someone pulling you up off the ground and then you repel off into outer space, you know.
I think if there was any time for them to really explore a different take on Call of Duty, it definitely would have been with the Cold War setting, because, you know, there's a reason it was called the Cold War, and it's not because there was a lot of fights in that.
Right.
There was just, you know, proxy wars over in Vietnam and Korea and whatever. But it definitely seemed like this would have been the time. And at the very least, they did, as you said, have tried to do some of the missions differently to have it not just be all big bombastic action.
No, absolutely. There's some cool stuff that's sneaking through subways and jumping off like trains and like getting by the Stasi in the rain, and you meet these people and they say, "Oh, I've got these informants, but they need either rescuing or taking out." And there's like a sliding doors effect that most of these Black Ops games have, where your choices and who you do and don't kill will affect the fates of other characters. And then towards the end, things really, as I said in my review, the Call of Duty universe, even if Cold War was real, even if Reagan was real, the Call of Duty universe is like its own fictional universe. Mm-hmm. And as you get to the end of Call of Duty Cold War, things get pretty fucking crazy, and they can get crazier based on what you've chosen to do. But ultimately, for all of its Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy stuff that I really like in there, it's still kind of just one of these bombastic, you know, blow up the helicopters and shoot this endless army of Russians who are coming at you or whatever. But I enjoyed it. Like, I enjoyed playing it. I think they're well-made, glossy games. It looks really good. It's not, the multiplayer isn't to everyone's taste. Like, the dedicated audience have openly come out and said, "Oh, I'm sticking with Warzone." And that's weird now, because Warzone's kind of like the main year-long Call of Duty game now. Mm-hmm. So it risks stealing the audience from these annual releases. I've seen people who've said, "I'm not buying Cold War because I'm just playing Warzone. That's my Call of Duty experience." So weirdly, they've created an internal competition, and they might lose their annual audiences just to this kind of side title.
I think that's something that people predicted might happen a few years ago when it was it Black Ops 3 that had the blackout mode. That was the
Blackout,
the first battle royale mode, and then they like kept all that going when they released the next Call of Duty game the next year, and only kind of then moved on to Warzone. And it is a very real possibility that, you know, you have this kind of split audience of people who are just going to be in it for the battle royale, and people who are going to come back because they like the traditional multiplayer of the series. I personally wish I could just find a way to buy just the campaign. Now, you prefer this multiplayer to? Do you prefer it over? Was it Modern Warfare?
Modern Warfare and Warzone, personally.
Yeah.
But whilst I say I prefer it, I understand why others wouldn't. Mm-hmm. It's really kind of dumb. It's very fast paced. It's very loose. It's really dynamic. And at the moment, a lot of the games are very, very, very close, whatever mode you're playing.
Yeah.
And if things are constantly close every match, that almost implies a sense of luck over a sense of actual ability. If it's always like razor thin, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as time goes on, maybe we'll see. It needs more maps. It needs more stuff adding to it. But I do understand the people who don't like it, like the people who are saying they don't like it. But I think this is worth, if you're not interested in buying it because it's fucking expensive, this is definitely worth a rental. It's definitely worth grabbing pre-owned down the line and just spending a weekend with. Absolutely.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to Dan. Dan, you tell us about these next gen systems, and so happy to learn you did not receive bags of cat food instead.
No, thankfully not. But these are big old boxes. Just to get the aesthetics out of the way, I think they're both terribly ugly, but that's fine. I'm sure we'll get slimmer versions or pro versions, something. We'll get something down the line. But right now, I think the Xbox is a little more forgivable. It's just, you know, it's a big square box. It's what I expect, but it's still not anything impressive. With the PlayStation 5, it's just kind of gaudy, and massive and takes up a lot of room. Not crazy about it. And like, I think my biggest issue aesthetically is like both of them on their side look terrible. Like these are both consoles seemingly designed to be set up standing vertically.
Yeah.
And I don't have the room for that, for one. And the PlayStation 2 figured this out. When you put it horizontally, you can just like flip the logo and it looks fine. You can't do that for any of these. So.
I will say the Xbox Series X and Series S, I think, are more designed to just kind of blend in, that you almost forget that they're there, that you don't notice it unless you're looking for it. Whereas the PlayStation 5 definitely looks like it's screaming, "Pay attention to me!"
For better or for worse. But that stuff aside, I am enjoying both consoles a whole lot. Aesthetically, in terms of the UI, I'm still not crazy about the Xbox UI and like pinning stuff and all that. I just pin the games I want to play, and that's about it. The PS5 UI is kind of what I expected. It's kind of an enhanced version of the PS4 one with the little boxes you can move between, and this time now you got to press the PlayStation button to bring up like a whole other subsection of the menu to turn off the console. So for the first long while there, I couldn't figure out how to turn the console off other than pressing the physical button. So both UIs are kind of whatever. Bring back the XMB, I say, but what do you do?
Well, I have to ask, is the PlayStation 5 UI leagues faster than the PlayStation 4 UI?
Leaps and bounds. Like, just going into the store is a split second. Like, the thing about the store actually now is it's super seamless. Like, it just feels like it opens up another menu within the menu you're on, and there's just games you can then scroll between. And then you just X out of it. Like, everything is super snappy. And a lot of that has to do with, obviously, the SSD. But in terms of games, right now I feel like the PlayStation 5 kind of ate Xbox's lunch and hit sand in its face because they have games.
Yeah.
But to go into the Xbox stuff right now, like I still appreciate Game Pass as someone who skipped the Xbox One. There's just so much on there to catch up on that I'm looking forward to doing in the next couple of years. But right now, I think not having Halo Infinite certainly stings. But after seeing the presentation, I get why. But right now, I feel like the PlayStation 5 should get a lot more attention just because of the fact it has games. So right now, I've just been playing Forza Horizon 4, which is a game from 2018, and Grounded, which is a game in early access.
Mm-hmm.
So having those as like the two big launch games that you're playing is, well, it's something.
Yeah, it's like I said last week with the Series S. It's just that, it's a nice console, but what exactly do I have to be excited about here? Yeah. I will say, though, that, I think 2020 and 2021 are probably going to be kind of sparse years for Xbox, but, they've bought a lot of developers over the past few years, and I think we'll start seeing the fruits of their labor starting in the holiday next year and then going into 2022.
Yeah, like I said a few episodes back, Starfield, like Bethesda's next big game, I don't doubt for a second that'll be an Xbox exclusive, probably on PC as well, for sure on PC. But I think that'll probably be like Xbox's maybe time to shine there when they start doling out that Bethesda stuff. But at the same time, Bethesda also has games coming to the PlayStation 5 exclusively, which is really weird. And contracts they have to honor, like Ghostwire Tokyo or whatever.
It's not that weird.
It's weird. I can't remember a moment like that happening in a while. But outside of the Xbox stuff, the PlayStation stuff, I think the biggest takeaway I have from the PlayStation 5 that I did not expect to like as much as I did is the DualSense. Mm-hmm. I went in with the mentality of thinking, like, I'm going to play all the third-party games just on Xbox because it's a bit more powerful, stuff like that. But now I am loving the DualSense controller so much that it has me questioning if I'll be playing a lot of third-party games just based on controller preference now. Because stuff like the haptic feedback, if that gets utilized by more games, that'll be the key here. Because I feel like with stuff like the touchpad on the PS4 that we saw at launch games with like Infamous Second Son that you can like spray paint a stencil or whatever, or you can rub a coin in Uncharted, all of that went out the door after like a year. So I hope that doesn't happen though with this stuff, because I feel like this stuff, it's not extra work for you. It's just more immersion. So I feel like a lot more people will take to it, and the reception so far has been really positive.
Well, I think if they can prove that it's not a gimmick, it will be carried throughout the console generation. You know, something like the touchpad on the PS4 it never really amounted to anything more than a gimmick. It eventually just became the thing that you press to bring up the map. 3D in the 3DS is kind of the same way, that like for the first year it was cool, but it was never really more than a gimmick. And, you know, at a certain point they're just like, well, let's not make a 3D console anymore and just sell these games on a non-3D one. So,
and that's the beauty of Astro's Playroom, a pack-in game that when I went to do it, I thought it'd be like an hour-long tech demo at most. But no, it is a multi-hour platformer, but it makes use of the DualSense in the best possible ways. Like it really showcases the weird, crazy rumble features and the haptic feedback in some of the most best ways imaginable. Like you can turn into a little robot that requires you to like jump around using the triggers, and you can actually like feel the resistance as you're like charging up your spring to jump. Stuff like that is really cool. And even the new Call of Duty release on PlayStation 5 takes advantage of the haptic feedback on the triggers when you're shooting guns.
Yeah.
Like you will feel a little bit of resistance and feedback from when you're firing a weapon and stuff like that. And unlike the touchpad, it's not like extra busy work. It's just added immersion. So I think I'm hopeful it'll catch on.
Let's go ahead and wrap this up with Occams. Occams, you've been playing the new Yakuza title?
Yeah, it's been quite enjoyable. I like Yakuza, but it's sort of like Chinese buffet, where it's good, and then it's too much. But you keep eating because you were raised to think that food is an emotional comfort thing. And you just keep eating, and then you're fucking sick of it. That's me in the Yakuza games. I love them, but man, they can just go on and on and on and on, and the side missions are great, but then you have to do the main story, and that's still like another 30 hours, and you're so sick of it. So I stepped away from them for a while, got kind of burnt out.
Okay.
And so then this one came out, and I'm like, well, it's an RPG, and that sounds awesome. And it's set in the Yakuza world, and not enough RPGs are set in like cities, modern settings. I miss that. I love fantasy RPGs. I love science fiction RPGs. But really, give me some like modern setting or some horror RPGs. In a better world, I would just design horror RPGs all day. I'd also have bat wings, but that's another story entirely. So I'm playing this, and it's just charming. I was hoping it would scratch that kind of Shadow Hearts, just weirdo, surreal RPG itch, and it does. The characters are very likable. Their stories are tragic and funny, and they're well written, and it's a great game. It's really fun, and I highly recommend it.
Has it been an adjustment going into a Yakuza game that's not a beat 'em up?
Nope.
No.
That doesn't bother me in the slightest, and I mean the turn-based combat, it's fine. I've had no problems with it. I don't find that, maybe some people are worried about the pacing being thrown off. I don't see that as an issue at all. It's just instead of doing the brawly bits, you do turn-based. You have different moves you can do. It's been really a pretty smooth transition for me. Do I want every Yakuza game to be like this? No, but if they made another RPG style game, wouldn't be mad at all.
I will say this is probably the most interested I've been in the Yakuza series, is seeing all of the gameplay videos of this one, because it just seems so out there. And I agree with you that not enough. It's tough to say not enough RPGs are set in the modern era, because there are a lot of Japanese RPGs that are set in Tokyo, but they're always just kind of near future or a bit futuristic version of it. The Shin Megami Tensei series is a good example of that. But I do think more games should more non-open world games should be set in modern day cities and stuff. Like if it's one thing if it's Grand Theft Auto, I get it, I understand it, but how cool would it be to just have like an RPG set in San Francisco or something? Like, to me, that would be something I would just fall head over heels for.
Yeah, very much so. I love, so Final Fantasy 15. You'll allow me just a small tangent, but and that game gets shit on a lot. I personally loved it, but one of my favorite things about it was like the diners. Like, just in this high fantasy crazy world, but I could just go into a diner and order a plate of kookaboo eggs or whatever the fuck. But it was just so I love those little moments. It was so fun to me. And this game is full of just strange moments that really make you smile. And the enemy design is great. and just everything about it. It's a really fun game. Like surprisingly, it may be my favorite game this year I've played so far. I forget what else has come out this year because 2020's lasted about 25 years total.
Yep.
So, but from what I can remember, it's definitely making me smile a lot, and I really appreciate that.
Well, I cannot wait to try that on my Series S. I guess whenever I get a chance to get into that. I still got to play Yakuza 0 because everyone says that's the more classic Yakuza games, that's the one to start with because it's, quote, the best. So
I think it's interesting thing you touched upon there, Occams, is like you say, I do think that these games are really hard to kind of play close to each other because they obviously take place in the same city and they have the same kind of action and like similar storylines. And so when a lot of people were kind of ragging on Like a Dragon for the change in combat, I'm just like, well, maybe it's what's wrong with having a change when you've got like 6 other games that are all the same.
Yeah, I really applaud them for wanting to challenge themselves and want to do something different because I mean it's got to be really tedious to make the same game even though they're successful as a creator, not just for the fans but as the person creating this is your baby and you're putting this out in the world. But I mean, how many times can you make this, not I'd say the same game, but I mean essentially, in a lot of ways the skeleton of it's the same and you have little nuances. I mean, look what happened to the Police Academy franchise. Mission to Moscow was awful.
Those are perfectly adequate comparisons to make right there.
Thank you.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm thinking of how to switch stuff up that generally is all set in the same area. When it comes to the Spider-Man franchise, like, I just beat Spider-Man and loved it. I'm going to play Miles Morales because I don't think I'm done with New York City, even though the Chrysler Building isn't there in this one. And I want to see what it looks like in winter. But I'm thinking ahead to like the next Spider-Man game, and I don't know. I mean, this is probably the wrong thing to say, but I don't know if I want it set in New York. And I know that Spider-Man is so closely associated with New York, but it's kind of like, do I really want another adventure zipping around this specific city again?
Yeah, I was thinking about that myself because that game just kicked my ass with how good it was and the cuts. Just everything was so wonderful. But yeah, you do. I want to stay in New York.
Yeah,
because it is. I mean, they did so well, but I feel like the environment is a big part of that game and the experience you have in it. I mean, let's think about a Delaware. Let's, Boise, Idaho, guys, if you're listening, I mean, really, let's go out there. Fort Lauderdale, really just rich for cultural moments in Spider-Man.
I personally cannot wait to perch atop the male strip joint in the Fort Lauderdale Spider-Man game.
Yeah, really.
Or guys, how about in Quahog? Hey Lois, remember when Spider-Man met Teen Wolf in Quahog?
You are listening to Podtoid.
That is it for games, which means it is time for the news.
This is the news!
And there was some very big news this week indeed, including nominations for the Game Awards. We'll get to that in a moment, but first, you probably would argue that the bigger story of the week has to do with the James Bond license. That thing has sat dormant since Activision proved it should not have access to any licensed IPs. And this week we found out that 007 is coming back to gaming with a new project from developer and publisher IO Interactive. That's right, we are getting a Bond game from the makers of Kane and Lynch and Mini Ninjas. Also Hitman, if anyone remembers that series. According to what we know so far, Project 007 is going to be an origin story for the super spy as they earn their 00 status. It does not seem like this will have any connection to the established film series, which I think will give the developers a certain amount of freedom in how they approach to take on the franchise. Chris, you're British, so I assume you're raised on nothing but James Bond, Mr. Bean, and whatever the fuck Figgy Pudding is. What's your level of excitement for this IO Interactive Bond game?
Figgy Pudding. For fuck's sake.
Spotted dick.
Diet of mincemeat pies.
Mincemeat pies, that's what we call them. I'm really looking forward to this game. You got to understand, and I'm sure it's impossible for you guys to buy this, but like James Bond isn't this like national fucking film franchise that everyone in Britain thinks is the best film franchise. Do you know what I mean? Like we don't all love Mr. Bean. Like, but whatever.
But
I'm
Chris,
really looking forward to it. Yeah, go on.
Is it? But do all British people consider "Don't Look Now" the greatest British horror film of all time?
Yeah, why not? Well, they know they don't because we're not kind of cultured enough to understand the truth. So, you know. I'm really looking forward to this Project 007 because I think for the first time in ages there's going to be a great James Bond game.
Yeah.
Or at least a great 007 game. Legends was abominable, awful stuff. Bloodstone was pretty good. Like, trust Bizarre Creations to do something like interesting, but unfortunately it kind of spelled the end for the company. And then before that, there's just been kind of a string of games that you can only really like if you're a Bond fan. Do you know, like games you kind of force yourself through, like that EA from Russia with Love game, for example, if anyone remembers that, which was supposed to start like a franchise. Like, that was supposed to be like they were going to make Octopussy after that, but like it just didn't sell, so they just canned the idea immediately. But I'm really looking forward to IO Interactive making a 007 game. I don't think there's been a more perfect marriage of like IP and developer in recent years than this one. And it's all up in the air because we don't know the details of what kind of game it's going to be, whether it's going to be like Hitman or whether they're going to go full on with fucking skiing and car chasers and all that kind of stuff. Whether it's going to be more Moonraker-y or whether it's going to be more kind of espionage, you know, more like Jason Bourne, like kind of Daniel Craig's movies.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So much of it at the moment is just wish listing, but just because it's IO Interactive, I can't imagine it not being very good at least and excellent at best.
One of the things I love about the old James Bond films is that you look at their action centerpiece for the movies, and it's like skiing downhill with machine guns. Like, you look at what they do now, and it's cars flipping and flying, and buildings getting destroyed by a helicopter with a minigun on it. And you go back to the old one, it's just downhill skiing. Got to escape these agents.
Mate, skiing's fucking dangerous. Like, I'd much rather be in a car crash than in a skiing accident, honestly.
Yeah, you and Sonny Bono.
Beat me to it, Occams.
But yeah, so it's weird because it's hard to talk about what this game's going to be because we actually don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm as a feature I wrote just yesterday, I'm really excited for the idea that they're not tying it to anything because of how open that leaves the possibilities.
Yeah.
Like, if they'd already come out and said Daniel Craig's in it and it's going to look at the history of 007, I'd be like, well, we know what it's going to be. But it could just be anything at the moment, and I think that's fantastic.
I'll tell you what would be fun. I didn't realize it was a prequel, sort of, or at least, a 007 training kind of thing. And I'm thinking about that. I typically don't like prequel stuff. I already kind of know how it ends, and that's never been fun for me.
Yeah.
But the idea of, so you're a candidate for 007 status, you're training on stuff, but to be able to, what if you could like play, I don't know, they could just like bullshit it, like VR mission kind of thing, where you could go back to classic like 007 historical situations he got out of Moonraker or different things like that, and like play those. It'd be kind of fun, kind of a way to sort of tie back a nod to the older stuff, but still keep it its own identity. And that wouldn't be the whole game, but it'd be kind of a fun little side thing.
What's the thing they do in Star Trek? The training mission that's unwin. There's like an unwinnable training mission.
Oh shit.
Oh yeah, sure. Kuroshi Maru, something like that.
There we go. One of those. Yeah.
So you almost mean like that, where it's like James Bond once got out of this. How do you get out of it? Almost.
Yeah. Or like James Bond fought Grace Jones.
I love that of all this like fucking 50 years of movies that are all like north of 2 hours, and you're just like, yeah, like when he fought Grace Jones.
Because Grace Jones being James Bond was the greatest scene.
I think you guys are being way too generous with what it's going to be. This is going to be like James Bond the intern, so it's just going to be running across getting coffee for M, like checking for misspellings on a secret document they're sending to the agent. Bicycling across London.
That's kind of just the original Moneypenny, isn't it?
Yeah.
Basically. It's a Moneypenny simulator. But yeah, I hope it's really good, especially for the fans who've had to suffer through so many kind of terrible games, going all the way back to like A View to a Kill on the Spectrum. Do you know what I mean? Like Bond has been like Batman, where for something that seems so perfectly designed to turn into video games, it took forever before we got a decent one. What's everyone's favorite Bond film?
Live and Let Die.
Casino Royale.
Skyfall.
I think mine's Casino Royale or From Russia with Love. It's really close.
I think mine would go like Casino Royale. It just gets it. I really like Honor Majesty Secret
me
Service.
too.
It's
Me
really
too.
good. It sucks that George Lazenby only got to be Bond once.
There's so many kind of great fucking what if he'd gone on to do Diamonds Are Forever and it had properly followed on from like him getting revenge for like his wife's death, as opposed to it's just bored Sean Connery turning up to collect a paycheck.
Yeah.
Like, but no, I think it's going to be a good game. It's got a great pedigree behind it. There's been enough time, and it doesn't appear that they're putting up any kind of walls around themselves to like stick to one particular script or Bond or time frame or whatever. So fingers crossed. Of course, by the time this episode goes live, IO will have put out a statement revealing it's like a mobile title or something.
It's like Hitman Go.
Remember Hitman Go?
Yeah.
007 Go.
Would it be amazing if for the Xbox version there was an unlockable that you could unlock GoldenEye?
Yeah.
Yeah.
GoldenEye N64 classic. Although, as I found out, my nephew, my brother apparently plays that with my nephew, and he hates it because he, us older gamers know how you can just spam the map with mines, and so you just wait for these younger people who aren't expecting it to blow themselves up. That's what he does.
You get in that one room in Complex, and you can cover the whole goddamn level.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. Our second story of the week is all about the Game Awards. Nominations for this year's Socially Distant Showcase were announced this week, and to the surprise of absolutely nobody, The Last of Us Part 2 is leading in nominations with 11 total, followed by Hades with 9 nominations and Ghost of Tsushima with 7. All 3 games were nominated for Game of the Year, along with Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and Animal Crossing New Horizons. Just FYI, my personal favorite Game of the Year is within those nominations. We're not going to go into all the categories, but there were some snubs and surprises on the show. I think Doom Eternal getting in for Game of the Year over Half-Life Alyx is a huge shock.
Yeah.
Dan, I figured
That
you would agree
floored
with me
me.
on that.
I was kind of like salty when I was reading that and not seeing Half-Life Alyx at all in the Game of the Year noms.
I mean, I know that Doom Eternal got really good reviews upon launch, but it definitely seemed like, at least with some of the people who played it, some of the Doom fans, that it kind of fell out of favor after they actually went through and played it themselves, that it wasn't thought to be as good as the last Doom. I also think Daisuke Tsuji getting a nod for his role as Jin Sakai in Ghost of Tsushima is a bit of a surprise because he was basically a dry piece of cardboard in that game, especially compared to Sumili Montano, who played Yuna, or Patrick Gallagher, who did Koda Khan. Also, the Demon's Souls remake is nowhere to be found, which is curious given its reception, and it also makes me wonder how the deadline worked this year, because Miles Morales did get 2 nominations in the show. Dan, outside of the Half-Life Alyx, do you have any thoughts on the nominees this year?
Yeah, just to briefly talk on the Demon Souls thing, that's surprising, definitely, because I've just started Demon Souls, my very first Souls game, actually, for the first time this morning, and that game is jaw-dropping in terms of visuals. Like, it feels like an next-gen game. Like, out of all of these titles I've played, from, Bud Snacks to Astro to Horizon on Xbox and some of those Xbox titles on Game Pass.
Yeah.
Despite with the upgrades and stuff, the way this game looks is just nuts. Like, it looks like something that I don't think you could run on a PS4 Pro. At least not at the frame rate at 60 like it is. So, and yeah, it not being on the noms like anywhere is kind of shocking. But like overall, I think it's a pretty dry show this year. I'm more excited for just the announcements, mostly because like if you just looked through all the different categories, it's just those same games over and over and over. Last of Us 2, Hades. Like Last of Us 2 and Hades have so many nominations, and it blows my mind.
And a lot of categories are up right against each other. Like, or not right against each other. They're up against each other, yeah.
And I still know nothing about Hades. I haven't played it. I haven't seen like any gameplay of it. So seeing it get that nominated that much has me interested. So I bumped it up the backlog a bunch. So I plan on getting to it probably next year.
Chris, you have any thoughts on it?
Not really. Like I've said this on the show before. I see the Game Awards like I see the Oscars. It's nice to see things get recognised, but ultimately, like I'm not bothered by who wins or who doesn't.
Okay.
Things are good and things are bad, and it's nice to see the good things get the recognition. But I don't hold much weight to what wins and what doesn't. It's nice to see that in a year that's been like an absolute disaster for so many industries and just for kind of the world in general, that there's still been some really good like creations come out of it. There's people have still made some like really nice art.
Yeah. And I think for me, what's always the best is just, it's that little indie game or that little mobile game that I play that I really love that I'm like, oh, this is never going to get any recognition at the end of the year. People are going to forget about it. And it manages to squeak by. I can't remember what it was last year. I want to say Wonder Song, but I actually think that didn't get nominated. But like this year, If Found, which is one of my favorite games of the year, it managed to squeak in with one of the nominations. So that's always my favorite part.
If Streets of Rage 4 wins something, that'll be cool. But if it doesn't, if it does, I don't know. I can't remember. It is right. It's soundtrack.
Maybe soundtrack. It's a shame that the fighter category doesn't include brawlers because it would wipe the floor with the fighting games nominated in there this year.
Definitely.
Yeah.
My favorite though is like strategy and simulation. You got like a whole bunch of like strategy games, and then I just because simulation have its own category. They threw in Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is really funny. So I hope that wins a strategy award. That'd be great.
Yeah. I think there are a few interesting categories this year, and I think for the first time ever, the best family game category is actually competitive. It's easy to see Animal Crossing: New Horizons as the eventual winner because I think Nintendo always wins this award. I think maybe there's 1 year that it lost it, but people really shouldn't sleep on Minecraft Dungeons as a potential dark horse because it's good.
Astro's Playroom got snubbed. Is it on there? Because
no. The only PlayStation 5 launch title that's on there is Miles Morales.
That's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Because like I said, when I went to Astro's Playroom, I just expected a tech demo. I was blown away at like how charming the whole thing was.
There's also kind of an issue with old games getting nominated in years they didn't release, and I'm not entirely against the idea. Like the Grammys has a similar system in place where you can get like a Best New Artist nomination on your third or fourth album if that was the album that made you kind of mainstream. That's how Lizzo got nominated last year. So it makes sense to me that something like Among Us is nominated for Best Multiplayer and Best Mobile Game. But also nominated in that category is Call of Duty Mobile, which if you don't remember, won it last year. And it seems odd to include that when there is a whole category called Best Ongoing Game that it, probably should have been nominated instead. I think it just kind of goes to show that the criteria for these awards are still fluid and all kind of at the whim at whatever Jeff Keighley wants to do. I know that he has mentioned in the past, either in interviews or in tweets, talking about how he doesn't see an issue with, like, let's say, nominating Fortnite for Game of the Year again, as opposed to just Best Ongoing Game. And, I don't want to get into that debate right now, but I will say that in the mobile category, there were no Apple Arcade games nominated, which makes you wonder how many people who were on the nominating committee still subscribe to that service, because it really seems like they are missing out on some really good titles. Not that the games that were nominated are bad or anything, but there's probably about 7 or 8 Apple Arcade games that could have taken the place of Call of Duty Mobile.
I think, though, the announcements have me more excited than normal, specifically, just because we got brand new consoles out, and I'm excited to see what's down that pipeline.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. We know that Halo Infinite's not going to be there. We know that a new Among Us map is going to be there, so I'm curious if Nintendo is going to use it again as a chance to announce the next Smash Brothers DLC character. I think that's right now the the announcement I'm most interested in, unless they, of course, bring another trailer for Breath of the Wild sequel project.
I'm hopeful we'll see Bethesda there and show off Starfield, hopefully, because that'd be cool to see.
Yeah.
Personally.
Occams, any announcements you would like to see at the show?
Shadow Hearts. No, I mean,
It's always Shadow Hearts.
yeah, pretty much. I like the surprise of it. I mean, I have my little wish list of everything I'd like to see. Certainly more Elden Ring, but I know that's not going to happen for probably a long time. But really, I mean, the Game Awards for me, the actual awards themselves, sure, whatever, take or leave. They're still kind of climbing up to become a legitimate thing in my eyes, and I would assume a lot of folks. But it's watching it live and then kind of live commenting with the community on Destructoid. That's my bread and butter. That's where I'm happiest. And any announcements or fun stuff that's just kind of lame yap. So
This is Podtoid.
That is it for the show. We are just about out of time, but before we go, Occams, do we have a community shout out this week?
we do. One of our community team members, Whispering Willow. It was her birthday. And I've known Whispering Willow, I think a lot of us have, for years now, and just a hell of a mod team member and a cool person. So very, very happy birthday to you, Whispering Willow.
Oh, absolutely. Happy birthday. I can't believe I missed that. That is it for this episode of Podtoid. But before we go, I have just a few notes about our upcoming scheduling. Next week, Podtoid will be off the air as we only buy enough bandwidth to do 4 shows a month. And there are 5 Mondays in this month. So, we will be off next week. And then we will be back after that on December 7th with the entire cast for our final listener question show of 2020. And then December 14th, we will all be on for our 2020 wrap-up show. And that show is actually going to be the final episode of Podtoid. We'll get into it then on why we're ending the show. I didn't want to spring it on you as a surprise. So there are just 2 shows left of Podtoid. And as Charlotte said when we were discussing it, we're going to try and go out with a bang. So on behalf of Chris, Dan, Occams, and myself, I want to thank you for listening. And don't forget to subscribe while you can on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, or the Destructoid YouTube channel.